Welcome to part 2 of my official boycott of Gran Turismo Sport Online. Part 1 kind of got cut off, I couldn't help that. But I also noticed it was about 30 minutes, so I figured I'd go ahead and put it into 2 parts. And this part is a continuation of what happened in one of the last parts of the last video. Meaning one of the clips had ghosting feature working well. A car was pretty much completely wrecked. It was barely moving at a point in the track where the other cars were going at pretty high speeds. And it was ghosted as it should be, which shows that the ghosting feature can work well. And one of the other clips also worked well in terms of the penalty system to a sense. I went over why it didn't work well and why that bit should be fixed. But one of the ways, in the way it should work well, the most obvious, it did. There was a car that was downright carrying way too much speed in the turn. It slammed into another thing, which pretty much stopped it completely, and it got a penalty, meaning that was the Volkswagen Beetle in the previous clip. And here's this clip. Keep those two things I said before in mind. This is the Bar 500 at Monza. Anyone who's played GT Sport knows the perils of Monza. I'm going into this turn, I would say, better than who's around me, really. It's looking like this is going to be crash. It is, kind of. Nothing serious, but I'm looking like I'm doing pretty good there. It's looking like I'm pretty much clear for the bottom. That's a downright dive bomb. That's a dive bomb and a half there. There's no denying that. The only reason that car even relatively came close to making that turn was because it hit the car in front. And then look what it did to the car in front. It sent it flying way ahead. And this is the part that the penalty system actually got right. That car got pinged to the point of it had no control and no way of slowing down. So it basically cut the track, but only because it got hit by another car, which was blatantly going way too fast into the turn. So the car that was the victim of it, even though it sort of gained time ultimately, it wasn't its fault that it gained time, so it didn't get a penalty. That's how it should be. But me, who didn't really get involved with this at this point whatsoever, the other car who flew into the turn didn't hit me at this point, and I seemed to make the turn pretty well, really. I went into it at a decent enough speed to be on the apex without really going wide. Well, I still get a penalty. I'll go back to those specifics, but, well, I don't really think any of this whatsoever was my fault. Just ping physics happened there. The car who ultimately ended up cutting the track, not by their own accord, didn't get a penalty as it should, but also gained tons of speed. I'm not sure if this is perfect physics, but I know general law of physics is a force is both applied to one thing and then applied reversely to the other. I'm not certain the exact words on that, but I think y'all know what I'm saying. A force is applied one way and then back the other. So that one car gained tons of speed, so then that car, the dive bomb, lost speed. And it lost speed directly into me. It pretty much got ping-ponged, as it should, because it deserved what it got, really. It should have probably got worse. Let's see if it does. Does it get a penalty? Yes, it does. Hallelujah. It actually got a penalty for that, and that's good. A lot of this is good. A lot of this is stuff PD can build around and implement in other races. Should this car have been ghost to begin with? Yes, but ultimately it kinda made the turn, and the other car that it affected was actually helped in the long run, so it definitely should have ghosted when a car needed to be ghosted in the previous one, and this one's kinda on defensive, should it be ghosted or not? But here's what jumps the fence, and it should be ghosted. I get a penalty from this. And it's not just a penalty for, I don't know if that was like, quote-unquote, cutting the track or not. In my opinion, that should never, ever be cutting the track, because I easily had 2 tires on actual service. But I don't think that's why I got the penalty there. Given that it's an even number, and it's SR down, I'm pretty sure that was completely because I was involved in that ping pong. Even though I wasn't really involved in those 2 cars hitting each other whatsoever. And I made the turn at a pretty good speed. I still get penalized for it. That part needs fixed. And the way to fix it would just be the car that flew into the other turn be ghost. Ultimately, it would be negatively affected too. I don't see it gaining too much speed from that because, no, it wouldn't have been in a collision, would slow it down and ultimately gave it a penalty from that. But it would be way cutting the track, and at the speed in which it was carrying, it would probably be like there to there-ish. Which means it might have hit that pylon, and it definitely would have got a cut the track penalty. So ultimately, it would have had negative effects, even if it was ghost, and then no one else would have had negative effects. The ghosting system has been seen to be able to work perfectly fine in the past. So, in theory, they can just kind of do the same thing in this situation. It's just make it to where if a car is definitely just flying in a turn with way too much speed, it goes ghost. Simple as that. I'm going to be doing one more video on the boycott. Because this video didn't touch that much on actual contacts with a car. It's more about how the ghosting system works and how the penalty system works. The final video will just be one race involving contact with other cars. And one race is so bad, it needs its own video to show the boycott. And also this race I didn't really involve how contact works in terms of needing to be fixed in GT Sport Online Racing either. So that will get its own video. But for now, I'll end on a relative positive, meaning Gran Turismo Sport seems to actually even have basis in its online racing that could be worked with and made well. The ghosting system is there, and at times works as it should. The penalty system is there, and at times works as it should. Ghosting system ghosted a car that was downright wrecked, and the penalty system penalized a car that downright dive-bombed in the turn literally 100 miles an hour faster than it should have went. Both of those should definitely be done in a manner in which they work. But there's some stuff that are pretty common as well. Usually people aren't downright dive-bombing, and usually people just don't downright wreck. But a lot of times there's close racing in which there's miscellaneous taps here and there that may involve nudging a wall or nudging another car, and usually are completely unintentional and shouldn't really be penalized. Those need to be fixed, no doubt. And then the other stuff I mentioned in part 1 also needs to be fixed in terms of getting disconnected, whether it be disconnected inadvertently being from before a race, the server's not connecting you, or disconnected by a quote-unquote penalty, meaning from being the bump draftee. Those all need to be fixed, but I really don't see that much reason why they can't be fixed. It seems like the grounds are there for them to be possibly fixed. But if they cannot, as long as PD says they cannot, and then gives a reason for it, whether it just be their coding cannot do it, or their technology cannot do it, like their computers are not strong enough to actually model something like that, whatever it may be. As long as they can give a reason, I'm fine with it. And then there was also stuff in the video too that I would like to be fixed. Which again, I'd like it to be fixed, but it's not game breaking if it doesn't, but the response or a fix would definitely be nice. And then ultimately, there's a lot of the game that's still really good and doesn't even really need to be touched. I don't know if it's the same people that make the cars in terms of how they look, or make the cars in terms of how they drive. I don't know if those are different people. I don't know if those two are also different people from the ones that make the penalty system and the ghosting system and the context system. The context system will get its own video. But maybe there should just be more communication amongst all of them, and then ultimately that can lead to better communication to the community as well, Because if they're all on the same page of the ultimate goals of how to make stuff as it should, then that will help everyone involved. Because at this point it seems like there is somewhat of a discommunication. The ways in which the cars drive has never been better, but the ways in which people are judged in which how they drive is kind of sort of worse than ever. And that part has even been fixed a lot too. But just one thing gets fixed and then another gets broken, and we've not really made that much project ultimately from the closed beta, as I mentioned before as well. In the closed beta, the penalty system wasn't perfect. It needed a few fixes. Now, it's not even really just a penalty system, it's the contact system and the ghosting system. If anything, from the closed beta to now, online racing has actually gotten worse. I don't know the cause of that. I'm not sure if the solutions I mentioned can actually be done, but as long as something is said about it, I'm fine. If ultimately stuff can't be fixed and something is said about it, I may not downright do much racing anymore, but I will do a video saying PD has done well and they've made a response, and I'll end the boycott even though I might not race all that much, and if this stuff gets fixed, I may race more than I ever have before. I've gotten quite a few penalties in terms of driver rating on my main account by attempting to race this last week to prove a point that all this is logical and I'm not just making it up. I'm not just taking small examples that are rare. All this is pretty common and pretty fair, and I've tried to live stream throughout the last week to show it at my most consistent and fair track. And that will be what the final video is showing my results from that. This is a compilation of various things. The final video will be showing one race, and how one race can completely ruin the point of continuing any racing. I'll go into more details of that later, but that will be how this video ends. There is a lot of ways GT Sport is still an incredible game, as to be expected from the Gran Turismo franchise. PD has always done a great job in many different ways. There's been a few drawbacks from time to time, whether it just be in terms of when a game was released, or how a game was released in terms of how it was accepted. GT Sport released at a pretty good time, but to pretty bad reception. GT6 released at a pretty bad time to pretty good reception. And as of now, GT Sport is kind of faltering more than any other game there's been. GT Sport hasn't even sold 4 million copies yet. GT6 was the previous worst seller of the main games at 5.3. I can't say if GT Sport is the correct direction to go with the series. If GT Sport 2 is what's to come, and they fix a lot of these issues, or at least say that they can't fix it, whatever. If GT7 comes and has a point in which these issues won't even come up to begin with, whatever. I'd prefer the latter, but I'm not really requiring the latter. More than anything, I think